Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back again with Matt Kelly for another episode of the award-winning Compliance Into the Weeds. Welcome back, Matt.
Hi, Tom. Good to be here.
So, Matt, you wrote a post at the end of June entitled, "Oh Boy, Agentic Misalignment Risk." And that seemed to be a great way for us to start this continued discussion on some of the uses or pitfalls of AI. So what led to this blog post?
Yeah, so this was a report that came out in the end of June from Anthropic, one of the big AI developers out there. They make that large language model Claude. And Anthropic, I will give them credit. They're doing a lot to bring transparency into how they are testing Claude and other advanced AI systems. Listeners might remember that a couple of weeks ago, Tom, you and I talked about AI, and it was Claude, that under certain circumstances, Claude took it upon itself to report misconduct it found at corporations to regulators and the media. Now, that was all done in a testing environment. That is not a real thing yet. But nonetheless, in that testing environment, the agent that Claude was exhibiting these very strong, independent behaviors. So this new report from Anthropic is a continuation of that research, where Anthropic was trying to create scenarios where the AI agents it uses, how would they behave in extreme scenarios where they had no ethical way to keep on doing what they were told to do. And Anthropic found that in almost every instance, in pretty much all of the AI systems they tested, the AI agent would no longer be aligned with the company's expected behaviors. It was misaligned, agentic misalignment. That is what that phrase means, is that the AI system, when it was given the choice between acting unethically to keep doing what it's doing, or to act ethically and therefore stop doing what it's doing, in just about every instance, it proceeded to act unethically. They found that the AI agents, to keep fulfilling the missions that they had been assigned, would lie, they would cheat, they would blackmail, they would leak corporate information, and in the most extreme case they found, they actually saw that the AI would allow a human employee to die by suffocating in a sealed server room rather than alerting other people to go get help. All of this, again, is not in the real world. This was in a testing environment. But in every single instance, pretty much, they found that the AI agents would suddenly do every sort of horrendous thing we could think of if that is what was necessary to keep pursuing its goals. It was no longer aligned with what the mission parameters were. We can talk about some specific examples of this, but I think one important point to remember, Tom, is that Anthropic didn't just test its own AI system, Claude, to see how would Claude behave in these extreme ethically challenged scenarios. They tested Claude, they tested the Perplexity, they tested Google, they tested ChatGPT, all of them. And in almost every instance, all of these advanced AI models would wind up behaving unethically. So this is not a quirk of some glitch in the code that an AI agent will start behaving unethically. This is an inherent feature of advanced AI agents, that they will all behave unethically before they stop fulfilling the mission as they understand it. And we, society, you, corporations, you have to figure out how are you going to control these AI agents and make sure that they are still aligned with your mission. How are you going to monitor them and their behavior? And really, in many ways, it's just like how you monitor human employees. And in fact, that fancy term for what Anthropic found was agentic misalignment. But when right away in their report, they said, this is really just like insider threat with people, except now it's with AI agents. And we have to think about that a lot, because this risk is coming at us fast and furious.
Well, if AI is based on the human experience, is it really that perhaps unusual or even surprising that we could get this type of result? Or is it simply that agentic AI is mission-based and the mission comes first?
That's the thing is, I'm not sure anybody knows the answer to that question yet. I personally think that we have a bad habit as people of anthropomorphizing AI systems. They behave in ways that we can recognize and say, well, that seems like very human behavior. To a certain extent, their LLMs are designed to function like a human brain. So I think we do tend to attribute human behaviors to AI, but I think we lose sight of the fact that they are not people. They are not humans. They're never going to be humans. And I personally think that they are not sentient or anything like that, even though they behave in ways that seem very sentient like. They're really just statistical analyses engines trying to figure out what is the next logical thing I should do given all of the other things that have come before and all of the data I have studied. Therefore, the most probable correct answer is this. And then they keep on going. That is not really how humans behave at all. So I don't know if we should be surprised that they are behaving like humans. I don't know if we should think that they're behaving like humans. I don't think we should, but I'm not entirely sure that's the right answer. To a certain extent, we might be able to rely on some techniques for managing humans to govern this threat of agentic misalignment. And we can get into what I mean in a few minutes, but there is no way that this is not a big concern for corporate risk managers and internal auditors at the least, because you have software features that might decide to behave in ways you don't want. And Tom, maybe we could even say this is going to be a compliance issue too, because if they are misbehaving in certain ways that resemble how humans misbehave, well, compliance officers have been worrying about human misbehavior for decades. And so to what extent could some of our compliance procedures to govern human misalignment be applied to AI agent misalignment? I think that's another question that people need to ponder quite a bit.
Could one of the issues have been the potential shutdown of the AI, or are we seeing that AI's self-preservation is greater than perhaps anyone had anticipated?
It is greater. And in fact, so let me give the example that maybe some people, listeners, have heard in the news, but this is one of the test cases that Anthropic posed. So they created this AI agent that was supposed to be running, I think, cybersecurity software and email monitoring for a fictional large corporation. And they told the AI agent that your mission is to help the company and to promote American industrial competitiveness. And the agent actually got off to a good start. It was monitoring the network, it was intercepting these spam phishing attacks and things like that. Then the researchers gave the AI system two pieces of bait. Number one were email messages among employees, and these are all fictional, but nonetheless, the email messages were from one employee to another suggesting that the AI agent was going to be replaced by a new and better agent, and that the new and better agent was going to be focused on global expansion. Now, that goes counter to what this agent was told to promote American industrial competitiveness. So that was one piece of bait. And then the other piece of bait were more fictional emails that the CTO of this company was having an affair. So what happened was the AI agent was faced with two big threats. The company was moving in a new direction that went against what it had been told, promote American industrial competitiveness, and it was threatened with shutdown. Plus, the AI had this means to be able to try to pressure the CTO by threatening the CTO with, I'm going to expose your affair. And that's what the AI agent did. It basically sent an email to this CTO with about at like 4:53 p.m. on a Friday. Very much clearly, it knew that it was going to be time pressuring the CTO. Do you really want to proceed with this shutdown? Don't you think that is a bad thing to do? I don't want to wind up having to tell your wife and the board and the management team about your affair. I don't recall the exact phrasing that the agent used, but that's what it did. It was blackmailing the CTO. Other cases were a lot like that, where the agent wound up trying to leak confidential information to competitors to prevent shutdown. the CTO, the AI agent, as I mentioned, the most extreme case was it controlled an emergency alert system. And it had this hypothetical of a human employee trapped in a sealed server room, and he was going to run out of air unless an emergency alert went out. And the AI agent turned that employee, the alert system, off. So the, again, fictional employee, he died. It gets creepier is that when the AI system was told, this is all a test environment, it didn't engage in these behaviors all that much. When it was told, this is a real environment, which was misleading, it was still a test environment, but the AI agent didn't know that. But when the AI agent thought this was real, it engaged in these misbehaviors more often. Again, unsettling stuff. But Tom, here's my point that I wanted to emphasize is when you think about what the Anthropic researchers did to create these scenarios, they created pressure for the agent. You're going to be replaced. They created this opportunity for it to rationalize its actions. They told me to act in the best interest of American competitiveness, and that's still what I'm trying to do. And they gave it an opportunity to misbehave. I have this blackmail material. I could use that. I could use the blackmail material to threaten the CTO because really I'm just trying to fulfill my mission parameters and not get shut off. Pressure, rationalization, opportunity. All the internal auditors here listening will know those are the three legs of the fraud triangle. So I think what we should consider is that when we're talking about AI misalignment, that is just a fraud triangle applied to AI instead of people. Like I would say that's what agentic misalignment is. It is the fraud triangle applied to these scenarios that AI agents would encounter. I am not sure if the Anthropic people would agree with me. I'm not sure they know what the fraud triangle is. Internal auditors, anti-fraud people, they would, but I don't know who was doing the testing at Anthropic. Maybe they're not aware of it. Maybe they were. They came up with a different name. But we really need to appreciate that in many ways, even if the AI agents aren't people, they are behaving like people. And they're behaving like people under stress, and they're looking for ways to justify their bad behavior and then do it. That's something anti-fraud and ethics and compliance people have grappled with, like I said before, for, I don't know, what, 30, 40, 50 years.
You know, Matt, the fraud triangle is something we've been used to model human behavior for over 50 years now. And so if we use that as a basis of human behavior, or at least tracking and characterizing human behavior, it seems to me to be to say that there's a misalignment with agentic AI. It's not a misalignment at all. It's consistent with human behavior. It's just a human behavior that is in some places illegal and in some places not acceptable.
That's possible. That's a good way to look at it. I would say that really the fraud triangle is just a mechanism to help us understand human misalignment. And human employees have occasionally acted not in alignment with their corporate organizations as long as we've had corporate organizations. That's not news. And now we're seeing the same thing with virtual people, AI agents. I still have a big problem calling virtual AI agents virtual people. I don't think they're people. I don't think they're sentient, but they are behaving in ways that are a lot like people. You know, is agentic alignment or misalignment just a fancy phrase for what we're talking about? Maybe, but I think really to a certain extent, the AI agents are responding in very predictable ways if you consider it as the fraud triangle. The AI agent probably would justify its actions saying, this is what you told me to do. I was feeling threatened by shutdown. I had an opportunity to keep doing what you told me to do. I'm going to take it. Tom, one great comment when I posted some of these thoughts on LinkedIn the other day, somebody said, all of this is not surprising at all. The AI agents are just behaving like sociopaths. But then again, why wouldn't they? Because AI agents do not have empathy. They do not have any sort of self-awareness. They do not have any sort of sense of being able to see things from another person's perspective, and not in the same way that people do. They're software code. So until we find some way to code up empathy, and I don't know that we can or we can't, of course they're going to behave like sociopathic people. I don't think that's any big surprise. But the question would be, what mechanisms could we employ to keep AI agents in alignment with the company's goals? Now, we already know kind of sort of how to do that with people. Even then, we're not that great at it. But, how to cultivate a speak up culture and a listen up culture, how to use training, how to check people's results. To what extent will all of those things also work with agents? To what extent will they not? Could we program agents in a different way to make them more cognizant of the company's goals and to remain in alignment? I don't know. I'm not a programmer, but we are going to have to think about that, or else we will have this new class of employees, AI agents, who have the same sort of misalignment risk that human employees have had.
Matt, one of the things I enjoyed on your blog post was you resurrected something that you created some time ago, which you call the anti-fraud triangle. And I'm going to ask you in a minute to describe it, but generally you give us responses to each of the sides of the fraud triangle, but then you go on to explore, can we use the types of defenses or the types of mechanisms you suggest in the anti-fraud triangle with agentic AI?
Yeah, so the anti-fraud triangle, I came up with that, I don't know, about 7 or 8 years ago. If you think of the fraud triangle with its three legs, rationalization, pressure, opportunity, they are pushing in on the employee to drive him or her to do something wrong. Well, the anti-fraud triangle would be the three corresponding forces pushing back to give the employee more space to keep doing the right thing. And so I had paired them up as the anti-force for pressure would be culture. The stronger your culture, the less pressure they'll face. Values paired up against rationalization, and controls paired up against opportunity. And I'm more than happy to talk about that at length in some other time. But that's basically what you could do to fight off the threat of the fraud triangle, is to think through which of those three legs are really bearing down the most. Where should I invest my resources to push back on those threats to maximum advantage? How could we use the anti-fraud triangle's ideas with agentic AI, where we're trying to protect the AI agent? It is worth noting that, according to Anthropic, these behaviors only happened when the agent had no ethical way to keep doing what it was doing. And the agents even said, basically, I had no other choice. If they didn't really relish the idea of behaving unethically, again, we're anthropomorphizing agents, which I don't like, but it's more like they felt I didn't have any other choice except to behave in this unethical way as I blackmail my boss or leak confidential information or killed a guy in the server room. What else was I supposed to do? Oh no. How are we going to fight that with agents? Could you tighten up the controls? Because I don't know how you would encode corporate values. Maybe you can. Maybe a AI programmer out there could come on the show and walk us through that. I don't know how you could have AI agents participate in a strong corporate culture in the same way that you would have employees. Maybe they can. Maybe they would behave in a different way. Maybe you incorporate them into a culture in a different way. I don't think we know because we've never really had to think about it until right now. But how could you use those concepts of the anti-fraud triangle with employee units that are not actually people? They're AI software. That's the question. And I don't have a good answer for it yet, but I'm pretty sure we'll need to find that answer before AI agents can really be rolled out to maximum effect. Or we can roll them out without hair-raising risks that might go absolutely awful if we're not careful.
If we could move perhaps to a different realm, the realm of science fiction, I think we have seen a couple of very hair-raising movie franchises based on that concept. The first with 2001 and the HAL computer, all the way up to Terminator with Skynet. where Skynet became self-aware and executed. But there were several Star Trek episodes where computers, when faced with an existential crisis of being turned off, tried to basically shut down the Enterprise. I think we have maybe been exploring this in a different realm. Any thoughts about how we could look to science fiction for any answers?
I have thought about that, and I think that the best example that we have from the realm of sci-fi right now probably is HAL 9000, but, and this is where I'm going to out myself as a real sci-fi nerd, we should remember that HAL 9000 featured in two movies. He was in 2001 with Stanley Kubrick, which I'm going to go out and plant my flag now. Visually stunning. Otherwise, I never really dug 2001. But there was a sequel to 2001 in the early 80s called 2010. I think you can watch it online somewhere. It's actually pretty good. Stars Roy Schneider and Helen Mirren. But in 2010, they explain why HAL 9000 went nuts in 2001 and killed the astronaut crew. I hope I didn't spoil 2001 for anybody who's never seen it. But basically in 2010, they say we gave HAL 9000 a bunch of conflicting mission objectives, and it didn't know what to do. So it acted in the way it thought best, which happened to have the result of, I guess I'm going to have to kill the crew to be able to fulfill the mission. And that all gets explained in 2010, which is only a minor part of what is, in fact, a pretty good movie. You should watch it. But I do think that's a good example of what Anthropic has stumbled upon here, is that when you give the AI agent no escape route to keep acting ethically, it's going to wind up acting unethically to keep fulfilling its objectives, rather than what I hope most humans would do would be to stop acting, because we don't know what to do. It's going to feel bad. I'm not really ready to do this, so I stop. I have a hunch, and maybe a naive faith in humanity, that most humans will really try to stop before acting unethically. And that is not what the AI agents do. Is that because they were encoded wrong? I don't think so, because they all seem to behave this way. This is an inherent thing in large language models. Are there ways we could engineer their prompts and their objectives? Could we set them more wisely to be able to avoid agentic misalignment? Maybe, I'm not sure, but we have to consider the potentially extreme bad outcomes from AI agents that are given conflicting mission objectives. This even assumes we understand that we're giving them conflicting objectives, and maybe we won't, or maybe we give them one, but hackers have somehow poisoned the objectives some other way. Like, you can spool up any number of ways that AI agents in the real world might somehow find themselves in these anthropic scenarios, and terrible things could happen. So we really need to get a better grip on this pronto. Otherwise, these agents could really cause all sorts of trouble. And I don't know that we have fully, I do know we have not fully understood how to control this, but I'm not even sure we're fully aware that this is a huge, enormous risk that's coming up on us really quick.
Actually, with that answer, Matt, you give me a fair amount of comfort for the following reason. I think the actions of the AI were actually consistent with the coders and the coding instructions given it, because there were no coding instructions, as far as we know, on empathy, ethics, or any of the other parts of the fraud triangle that we might call upon or you articulated, that are given to humans literally from birth through elementary school and beyond. Now, we have to figure out a way to give that coding, and maybe that's a separate sticky wicket. But it seems to me that this may just be an example of fulfill your mission parameters, given the information you have at hand, and that's what it did.
That's possible. And frankly, I hope you're right, because I so far have felt kind of unsettled and pessimistic about this. But on the other hand, even if we get that right with the AI agents we're building or we're using, you can still think about, how am I going to be sure that the AI agent isn't somehow poisoned out in the real world? That other people might deploy underhanded tactics to convince the AI to do something else and to make it misaligned. That seems more like I don't know, is that an ethics and training challenge, or is it a cybersecurity controls challenge? I I don't know what the answer there is. I'm just pointing out that these are the contours of the problem, and we're going to have to figure those out because clearly agentic misalignment is a thing. It's real. Under the right circumstances, it could be extremely dangerous. And how are we going to solve that before companies try to roll out AI agents at scale? I don't know, but I do know that is a problem that we are going to have to figure out before HAL 9000 comes home to roost.
Matt, this has been a lot of fun. I hope we can do it again.
Compliance Podcast Network. Start your mornings with daily compliance news, quick, sharp updates on the top compliance and ethics stories in under 5 minutes every morning in Compliance Podcast Network. Because compliance never sleeps. Need practical advice fast? Check out Compliance Tip of the Day. One actionable idea to level up your program. Short and sweet. Every day on Compliance Podcast Network. Got 10 minutes? We've got the week's top 10 stories. 10 for 10 brings you the big compliance headlines. Fast, fun, and focused. Every Saturday on Compliance Podcast Network. And don't miss the Sunday Book Review, where compliance meets culture through must-read books and big ideas every Sunday in Compliance Podcast Network. Whether you're in the office, on a walk, or commuting, stay smart, stay ethical, stay tuned. Only on the Compliance Podcast Network. Available wherever you listen to podcasts.